Narrative as a pedagogical tool. Objectives. The B.Ed students realize the significance of using narratives as a pedagogical tool. They realize that the narrative gives holistic treatment to language. They develop understanding about the strategies that can be used to make the narrative comprehensible. They develop an understanding about the theatrical aspects of narratives. They get familiarized with the features of the oral narratives. In one of our earlier lessons, we had discussed in detail various aspects of teacher talk. We had also discussed how code switching can be used as a pedagogical tool, especially at the beginning stages for ensuring comprehension. Oral narratives and the interaction that follows can together make a vital component of teacher talk. In the present lesson, we will analyze in detail the narrative as a pedagogical tool and how it can be made more comprehensible. Any ideas why we are proposing narratives for giving listening inputs to learners?
Children like to listen to stories.
That is true.
They'll be curious to know how the story progresses and comes to an end, won't they?
Of course they will. Anything else?
Narratives make use of the emotive aspects of the language.
Who would like to elaborate on this point?
For example, when we listen to the story of Ponnamma in an earlier version, we are emotionally disturbed. We can actually feel her pain.
Yes, the narrative serves to register the character emotionally in the minds of the listeners and readers.
We have seen that the narrative contains descriptions and dialogues, which too are discourses.
Yes, we can say that narratives allow holistic treatment of language as they can accommodate other discourses. What about the linguistic content of the narrative? What types of sentences and expressions feature in narratives?
I think it can accommodate different types of sentences.
Like what?
Statements, questions, and sentences expressing strong emotions, short responses, etc.
That's right. In this sense also, narratives provide holistic linguistic input to the learners. Moreover, the oral presentation of the narratives takes care of various aspects of voice modulation. In the coming modules, we will have more to learn about narratives. We were proposing code switching as a tool for ensuring comprehension. This is needed for the beginners. What about using narratives in higher grades? How do we ensure comprehension? Let us see.
Listen to this story, children. A dove and an ant lived in a tree near a pond. One day, the ant fell into the pond. It could not swim. The dove saw it. She dropped a leaf near the ant. The ant stepped on the leaf and reached the bank. The ant thanked the dove.
Suppose the story is narrated in grade 3 or grade 5. Will the learners comprehend the story?
Yes, I think it is comprehensible.
Why do you think so?
It is a simple story We have seen similar simple stories in English primers.
What criteria do you use for rating a story as simple?
The sentences are simple in terms of structure.
Anything else?
The vocabulary is not very heavy.
Anything else?
The number of sentences is less.
Here, simplicity parameters are decided based on the implicit notion that the learners will be able to store the story in their memory and reproduce it as and when required. But it is doubtful whether children will be able to comprehend the story. A few strategies can be worked out to ensure comprehension. One of them is interaction prior to the presentation of the narrative.
Children, do ants live alone or in families? Why do you think so? Yes?
Ants live in large families. We don't usually see a lonely ant. Thank you.
Where do you think the other ants are? Yes?
They may be somewhere else.
They may be somewhere else. I'll show you a picture. What do you see in the picture?
Ant.
You see the ant, the colored picture here. What do you see this here?
Mango.
Some flowers, the mango flowers. Where is the ant moving, you think? Yes, Shipra?
The ant is moving towards the mango flowers.
The ant is definitely moving towards the mango leaves and more mango flowers. Why do you think the ant is moving towards the flowers? Yes, Anusha?
I think there may be honey in them.
You may think that there is honey in them. Now listen to a story.
Another strategy is including images in the story.
On the wayside, there was a pond. What a big pond! And how many water lilies! White lilies, red lilies, big green leaves. How beautiful! The pond is full with water. Of course, it is a clear water. Like on a mirror, you can see your face on it. There is a tree growing near the pond. A mango tree. Not a big one or not a small one. Two. It has several branches. Most of the branches are bending over the pond. Now, there are no mangoes on it, but only flowers. Bunch of flowers, not one but many. A fresh smell flows out from them. Ah, what a nice smell!
Yet another strategy is to include dialogues and self-talks of the characters.
On the topmost branch, there is a nest. A dove lives in this nest. A small white dove with beautiful red eyes. What a nice bird! How beautiful it is! Somewhere on the tree, there is a family of ants. A father ant, a mother ant, and their many children. How many ants? One day, the father ant, mother ant, and the baby ant were sitting on one of the branches. At that point, the wind was blowing. They felt the smell of flowers. What a sweet smell, said the ant to himself. Nice smell, said the children. Yes, it is, said the mother ant. Where is it coming from, Mom? Of course, from the mango flowers. I am sure there is honey in the flowers, said the father ant. But we can't reach there now. Why? The mother ant asked.
Using familiar words wherever possible, using proper voice modulation, facial expressions and gestures can also add to comprehension. The listeners will be able to comprehend the narrative better if the characters are emotionally registered in their minds. See how the narrative continues.
Take them to the flowers, the mother ant demanded. Sorry dear, we can't go there now. But why? Can you feel it? The wind is blowing. But it is not a heavy wind. It is only gentle breeze, said the mother ant. But the father ant was afraid of the wind. He didn't move at all. Please, Dad, take us to the honey, said the little ants. Little ones, how can I take you there now? The wind will blow us away. Please, Dad, we want honey, said the little ones again. Get it for them, will you? Said the mother ant. Okay, let me try. Does the father ant really want to go to the mango flowers for honey? Then, why is he ready to go now? Do you think he is afraid of his wife?
The facilitator has to pause the narrative at critical points, thus creating narrative gaps. Meaningful interaction can take place in these gaps. We have been discussing pedagogical aspects of narratives. Earlier you saw how the teacher was presenting narrative in a primary classroom. Let us have a glance at her presentation.
Chintu was doing his homework. He felt bored. He stretched his hands and legs. He said, okay, now let me take some rest. He went to the next room, but he left his box open. Then a funny thing happened. A long pencil from the box got out and it said, what a lucky day. आज तो ये बॉक्स ओपन रख दिया, मैं आज बाहर आऊंगी, थोड़ा फ्रेश एयर लूंगी. Okay, then it saw, it came out of the box, it saw here and there. Then it thought, this table is very big. इतना लंबा टेबल पे से मैं नीचे कैसे जाऊंगी? Then it thought and thought. It said, okay, let me slide from the side. और वो टेबल के साइड में से स्लाइड कर गया. उसके बाद में देखा वो नीचे है. Then it stretched its hands and legs again. It jumped, it danced, it rolled on the carpet. Then something happened.
What are your observations on the presentation?
The teacher was modulating her voice.
What is that for?
To convey the emotions and feelings of the characters.
Any other observation?
She was using gestures and facial expressions.
Yes, gestures, facial expressions and voice modulation are all theatrical components. As these are non-verbal means of communication, they are essential features of the oral narratives as well. Some part of the semantic content of the text gets loaded onto the articulatory features such as stress, pitch, tone and tempo. And if presented properly, this part can then become easily comprehensible. The characters depicted in the narrative may be undergoing a range of emotions, whether it is happiness, sorrow, anger or anguish. It appears on their faces. The facilitator has to use appropriate facial expressions while presenting the narrative so that the listeners who are observing the facilitator get a feel of these. Like in theatre, the central characters get emotionally registered in the minds of the learners. Watch this.
In the evening, Radhika came to Vishnu's home. Vishnu, how is your mother? She is sleeping. Did you give her medicines? Yes, your father gave me money. For a moment, Vishnu thought about Radhika's father. He has always been kind and helpful to him. But how long can we live like this, begging for help from others? It's a shame. Aimless monsoon clouds were fast moving to distant horizons. He felt cold water licking on his feet. A dead frog with its swollen belly was getting tossed on the wavelets. What are you thinking about? Radhika asked. Oh, nothing. He smiled at her. She started telling about things at school. You know, after you left the class, a new girl came to the class. Her name is Geeta. She came in a car. Oh, that is Geeta then. I met her on the road. Then he told her what happened on the road.
Using appropriate gestures is equally important. Unlike the actors in a drama, the facilitator performer does not have the freedom to move from one point to another while presenting the narrative. It should be kept in mind that the facilitator is presenting the narrative and not performing a mono act. If the listener moves from one place to another and shows all the actions, the learners will get distracted by the dramatization. Therefore, the gestures of the facilitator are to be optimized. Let us watch a small clipping.
Sitting inside the room, Raju was reading a book. Raju, Raju, he heard Ravi calling him from the outside. He looked outside through the window. He was standing at the roadside looking at Raju's door. Ravi, he called out, come in. I am coming, said Ravi. He unlatched the gate, walked across the courtyard and entered the room. Raju walked towards the door, stretching out his hands.
As you have watched just now, the performer can coordinate the movements of one hand with that of the eyes. Using one hand, he or she can suggest the position of a certain character and his or her movements without moving from one position to another. We have already come across some of the features of the narrative that will facilitate better comprehension. There are a few more points to be considered. We have to be selective about the theme to be used for building up the narratives. We will go for themes that belong to the experiential orbit of the learners, that have social and cultural relevance for the learner, that can involve them psychologically, that have scope for generating emotions, that can capture the element of fantasy or imagination, that can trigger critical thinking. Thank you.